So, purpose of our meeting tonight is to continue our budget process. We are reviewing all the elements of the Board of Selectmen budget. We are not having public comment in these meetings, so we're not going to be discussing anything outside these budgets. If any town officials have got questions, we certainly can take those, but I just wanted to remind everybody that that's where we are today. So, topics to cover today, we're going to go through Parks and Recreation, Police, Public Works, and Library, and I believe Ed needs to go first, so we will talk about Public Works first. Mr. Gentile and Kate.
So the first up is the Management and Engineering, or the admin section. So one thing I want to point out before we get too far into Public Works, and when we get to Parks and Rec, the contract with the Public Works Union was settled earlier this year. So when you look at the salary accounts that involve union employees, it's going to look like a double increase because the budget for fiscal '24 was based on the old contract. So the first year of the increase, which was this year, is not reflected in that budget yet. The transfer will be made later in the year. So it will appear like there's been a double increase, but that's not in fact the case. So this budget, there's really no significant, there's no changes in staffing. That's just the regular budget. The seasonal and temporary is up because of the minimum wage increasing. Now you'll see professional licenses having gone down and medical services appearing for the first time. What we did there was, in the past, the dues and professional licenses included a payment to CCM for drug testing. So we have moved that into medical services. So really, that's not an actual change. And that's kind of it. It's a pretty much status quo budget, except for the personnel. Yes.
My only question was on your professional services.
Yes.
The $12,000 for the bridge inspection, is that enough? Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Okay.
We don't do every bridge every year. It's correct?
And we've been spacing them out now and using parts of the budget to do different portions. And bridges cost, because of the size, cost a little bit different. So we've been using around 12 each year.
Okay. Parking. This portion of the parking budget is the town-owned lots, okay? So that would be Leroy West and Center Street and the Tilly lot. So the salary, what looks like a decrease is because last year we had an estimated budget and we hired at basically a lower rate than we had budgeted for. Professional services is credit card fees. We see more and more use of credit cards for paying for permits and tickets and daily parking, et cetera.
Seems like a lot.
Yes, but looking at where we are, I believe that to be an appropriate number. There is a revenue component to this one that will hit when we do the revenues. Public building management expenses. Okay, so this is one of those areas where you see that, that what looks like the double increase with the 6%. Increases here, just vendor increases on the security services. It's not a change in anything. Sewer and heating costs are down based on our actual usage. We're anticipating a decrease. And then you'll see in the uniforms, you'll see this across the board between Public Works and Parks and Rec as well, increases in the uniforms because of a contractual increase in the clothing and tool allowances for the union employees.
But Kate, they're not the same percentage.
Well, percentages, when you say they're not the 24%?
Yeah.
As compared to?
Okay, because it's not per uniform, it's on the aggregate amount. Okay.
It's, yeah, and so a $100 increase
Right.
on a $200 budget is bigger than it is on a,
Right. We use the same service for everyone?
no, it's an allowance. So the employees are allowed to purchase clothing, and we reimburse them for the cost of that. It does have to meet certain criteria. And sometimes it could be that we purchase it on their behalf as well.
Is the decrease in heating fuel more that we maybe over budgeted for '24? Are we going to spend all of that 80,000 now?
I would say not.
Well, because the 64 you've got budgeted compares favorably to 67, 61 and kind of prior years. I just wonder
Yeah.
if this year just was over budgeted somehow.
Yeah.
Well, the 80 was based on the units for distribution
Okay.
and carrying costs for the utility companies.
Okay.
So it was at that time, and I do the budget in December, higher. So I had anticipated that it was going to be, at least stay the same.
Yep. Yep, what's next?
Okay. Roadways, walkways. This is the biggest part of the budget, where the bulk of the employees are. So seasonal and temporary going down because we've just had trouble hiring people. So we're facing that reality. Paving services down because we don't need as many storm drain supplies. Software and maintenance support. So this, between software and maintenance support and telecommunications, this is another one where we've moved the expense for the GPS for all of our town vehicles. The service we had used previously was in software support. It is now, the cost is now in telecommunications.
And are you doing more paving this year?
No, we're about the same. We're around 5.8, 5.9 miles.
And you've caught up from the pause we had because of the higher paving costs, whatever, 2 years
We did.
ago.
We're all caught up as of July, August of last year, so we're back on the cycle during the summer.
And then here you see the utilities, based on our actual experience, we're decreasing those requests for the next year. Motor fuel, that's, we bid with a consortium. It's run by one of the COGs in the center of the state, the Hartford Capital Region COG. And so we got a better price this year than we did last year.
Okay, and tree maintenance is down 10,000.
To help me absorb some of the increases in this, I looked at that item as something that I hadn't been spending $150 on every year.
Okay.
So I took 10,000 out of that for now. And
Okay.
we're pretty caught up with the trees right now. We're carrying maybe 10 to 15 trees backlogged that we continue to do it. The process is that we use a contractor and support it with our DPW staff, which is why we just don't bang out. We kind of spread them out over a certain amount of time unless they're an emergency, which I go out and remove the tree immediately.
Okay.
And then tires is down, and that's just a factor of which vehicles need tire replacement. That one, you'll see any of the tire budgets tend to fluctuate year to year. And we're able to hold ice stable, ice control materials stable. Solid waste. This is where you're going to see the biggest individual increase in this proposed budget. Okay. So we have professional services. This is a variety of things: scale certification, consultant fees, the software costs, the deep permit. And I think, I didn't write down what the
Credit
basic-
cards.
Credit card fees were the main cause of the increase. So, yep,
Can we talk about solid waste?
the next one?
Oh.
Yeah, that's the big one.
Yeah.
So we are currently negotiating the contract. We do hope that we'll be able to get this estimated increase down
For the
Before the budget's
viewing
finished, but-
public, we kind of go through what the problem is and what's caused this, so everybody understands that.
I think he wants to go there.
That's why he's here.
That's right. Well, like Kate said, currently we're negotiating a contract moving forward from July 1st of this year. Our contract runs out June 30th. What you see before you is their proposal to us approximately 6 weeks ago. We've made a counter proposal to them. Other than that, I don't normally talk about what contract items we're
Okay.
looking at, but then it's hopeful that we'll meet in the middle somewhere.
Okay.
That part of it, a couple other things have changed on their end of it, and the big item is, of course, recycling. So no longer will we see a cash flow from that.
We're
There's
gonna
going
have
to
to
be,
pay for it.
there's going to be a charge.
Yeah, okay.
Does that seem like it's industry-wide?
It's absolutely industry-wide. We were probably one of the last ones to get money, I think us and Norwalk, last to get any type of revenue from recycling for this length of time.
So Ed, while you're on that, I think they're going, we were getting $7.50 and now we're paying $75.
They are going to charge us $75 a ton.
Okay, is that something that we're negotiating also? Or
It-
is that, does that look like that's
That's
realistic?
not the item that, it's actually lower than others. Like I said, I don't want to give away too many, but there is a rebate that comes back off of that 75, and it's based on our clean paper cost, 80% of the paper item that they have. Darien has probably, they have a clean system, that they call it. There's not a whole lot of contamination within the recycled items. So they are going to give us back 80% of that number. That number has been running right now somewhere between $45 to $55 a ton. So in essence, 75, 55, basically going to cost us $20 a ton to get rid of the recycling for that month. And they'll address it every month. But they have been in the plus area between 30 and 50 for the last 6 to 9 months.
So that's a spot price?
It is.
Okay. And you don't want to try to lock that in?
I don't think I can lock it in.
Okay. All right, right, okay. Okay,
There's other things I'm trying to lock in.
okay.
Okay, what's next?
Sarah?
I just have a quick question.
Oh, sorry.
Ed, like many people in town, I go to the dump. How's the compactor doing?
That's part of the negotiation process also.
Okay.
The length of their contract will allow for us to do some major improvements over there.
That'd be great. I know it's frustrating for the guys. They work hard.
It's frustrating for me also.
I bet it is. Bet it is.
Then the other area of increase there is the household hazardous waste disposal. Going up about $1,500. So, do you
So-
want to?
Wait, so when we do that household hazardous, we rotate town to town, right?
There are multiple towns that do it.
Right. So, is there any way to get that down?
Well, this is an estimate based on the number of cars that have come through over the last 3 years. And we go up and down.
Okay.
So this past year it went up, so I bumped it up a little bit.
So it's
The unit
volume?
price went up too.
Okay, both, okay, okay.
Okay, so we'll take a quick look at his general fund revenues. So the parking operations, this is where we would have the permit fees for Leroy West and the merchant permits for Center Street. And I don't know if we put any wages money in here.
And these are just daily parking fees from those lots?
Yeah, mine, just waiting for my screen to come up. So you have the permits, pay station late fees, and you have the parking waitlist fee for Leroy West. And so, as you know, we increased our permit fee this year and the daily parking fee. So the revenue is increasing accordingly. The other big area of revenue would be obviously the dump. So you have permit fees, you also have the tipping fees for recyclables, and do have still some revenue coming, the sale, that's the give back on the, that you were talking about.
The rebate.
Rebate.
That tipping fee would be something that would be new for recycling.
Okay, so we have to have a public hearing and,
That would need to be done to collect that revenue.
And that's at 45 a ton?
I propose, well, what this number is when haulers bring it in, they bring it in for free right now because we get revenue from it. Since we're no longer going to be able to do that, I've selected $50 a ton to charge them to come in.
Why wouldn't we charge them what it's isn't it costing us 75? Or is that?
Not if you add the rebate to it.
Okay, but if we didn't add the rebate,
We could charge them
the
75.
rebate could go away.
I'm trying to keep the incentive to recycle alive, so my number at 50 is just less than half of what it costs to get rid of regular MSW, if you will. It's 118 a ton for a hauler to drop off. So I was trying to keep it low enough so that people would still want to recycle, and it would still be cost effective for us to do it. That was just the number I picked.
Okay, but that's something the board will discuss, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. So on the sale of the compost, what is that? That's not the compost the food compost?
No,
Okay,
it's the leaf compost.
all right. How do we make more money there?
some more compost.
Right,
Some more compost.
okay. So we have a big increase in the brush cost.
We will see a big increase in the brush cost.
Okay,
I think it's one of our problems with the compost that we're kind of limited in area that we can actually compost.
Space?
Space, yeah. I mean, some other communities have a lot more space and they have quite the operation of turning the piles and can do a better job of it. But
It's just that basically that one drop-off area, that's all we have. It's up there behind that, that's it.
No, there's quite a few windrows between the salt dome and the
Okay, there's
fire
lots of-
training.
There's lots of places you've done.
Yeah, there's a big area back there, but we do get a lot of leaves. The good thing was this past year, what we shipped out was a whole lot less than what we stored on site and turned into compost.
Okay.
But I have to free up that space, so around September, October, if we haven't sold it, and I want to make sure we're not shipping leaves come November, I start to give it away. And people take it and they use it, but I need the space, it saves us money by doing it that way.
all right. My last thought on revenue is it would be terrific if it's true that 25% of our MSW is food refuse, if we could get our food composting. What do we do, like 4 tons? a
About
month?
4 tons a
Yeah.
month.
Yeah.
And where is that collected?
at
Up the transfer station.
Okay, we do food compost, okay.
Yeah, you drop it off.
Yeah.
But-
the key is you have to get more people into the program
Right.
and active in it.
Right.
And yeah, that's like maybe education and communication.
That I can do.
And I think they
That way-
get,
Good
if you
newsletter.
participate, you can get the compost from that for free, correct?
We usually buy about 40 yards of it and put it up by the transfer so people can see what they're getting out of it. They bring a couple 5-gallon drums, they fill it up, they take it home, they use it for their plants and stuff like that. So it's actually very, very rich. But that's all that stuff is shipped up to the New Milford area and then back down again.
Okay.
Might make it bigger.
Yeah, that would be good.
I'll give you a person's name that you want to talk to about that. She's been.
Yeah, let's talk about that tomorrow, or when you have time. Okay. What else?
Well, let me ask you, you have capital, sewer, and parking operations. So do you want to go through all the operational accounts and then to all the capital, or do you want to do?
Well, since he's got to go, why don't we just, you want to do
Well,
that?
he's all of them.
Or you all, well, yeah, we do all of them now before you have to go, is that?
Yeah, but I just don't know if you want to go through the other sewer operating and parking operating, then do the capital for each, or do you want to do general fund capital?
Oh, let's do all the operating budgets and go to capital.
All right.
Are you going to sewer or what are you doing here?
We'll go probably parking because alphabetically it comes first.
Whatever loads faster, that's the
Yeah.
And now it's parking capital. Parking operations. Okay, so this fund is the state-owned lots.
You going into admin?
Pardon?
Which one are you going into?
Oh, employee benefits.
Okay.
I'm going in alphabetical order, it's just easier to try and remember which one comes first. That messes that up, but, you know, that's okay.
Be flexible.
All right, so we have there's one full-time, 2 parking operations, 1 50%, and then the parking administrator, I believe, is 75%. So this is the benefits, medical benefits, pension, all allocated based on the number of employees there. And I think we also charge 10% of ed, 10% of,
No, nothing of ed.
nothing of
here.
ed? Tony? We charge a percentage of some of the other staff to the fund. So, you know, you're seeing here what we're seeing in the other benefit accounts. The changes would be if there was a change in the personnel and what they were taking. That's why you do see some reductions. Back to it's like a blue circle of death. Administration, this is the cost, going to be the cost of the parking administrator and all the overhead type stuff, the permit. Jeez. Okay. I did boost the cost of mailing based on the actuals. This is actually something we'll get back to the general fund, but based on how many renewals and wait list letters we send out, costing us a little bit less for the ticketing system. And then we have the software maintenance that's stable. And then we've allocated a share of the insurances over here. Okay. The last part would be the operations, which are our rangers. So there's 1.5 rangers allocated to the parking fund. Okay, it's not, mine's coming up. So, can you slide just a little bit? Okay, so we have the full-time employees. So in the other fund, we saw that we were slightly lower on the ranger. This has we did have the one ranger. We changed the grades. We I forget what the title is. Here we go.
Parking crew.
Parking crew leader. We had a lot of difficulty getting and keeping rangers. It's the lowest ranking job that we have in the Public Works Park and Rec union. And we would get a ranger and we'd have a vacancy and we'd lose the ranger. We actually had one ranger who I think was 2 weeks before he jumped to Parks and Rec. So one of the things we realized part of the problem was that it was so low paying. And we decided to create the crew leader who would oversee the other ranger, also have some additional responsibilities. So that was, the way it had been budgeted last year was not for a crew leader, so that's why you're seeing a larger increase here. But I gotta say, they've been doing a fantastic job. I had somebody from a software company emailed me today saying, you know, I hear people are unhappy with your parking enforcement software. And I said, well, really, it's not the software they're unhappy with, it's just that we have the audacity to ticket them.
Use it.
But that it really has helped us to get the enforcement going strongly because it's getting people to also pay for the daily parking. So this one we have snow removal costs. Again, the credit card charges, platform training required for the rangers from Metro North. We do have some facility repair and maintenance costs going down. Telecommunications, slight increase there. We do have surveillance there. And sewer use charges going up since we reopened them, I guess. And then uniforms going up. Also at the bottom, you see the transfer to other funds. So our lease with the state requires that basically the profits from the operations be set aside for capital maintenance and repairs. So what you see there, that 267 is basically a plug number. That's the amount that will be transferred into the capital fund to be used for capital projects in the parking operations, in the parking lots, the state-owned ones. All right. Go to sewer. So just to refresh, the sewer operations, it's self-supporting, and we don't actually, the Board of Selectmen, neither the Board of Selectmen nor the Board of Finance sets the sewer service rate. That's done by the Sewer Commission. So at the end of the budget process, they know basically how much they have to raise, and then it's up to them to determine how they're going to do that. So there's not a lot of change here. Professional services reduced slightly. That's a legal fee account. So and that can go up and down depending on the year, how much we need it. But engineering, we are increasing that slightly. We have designs, assistance as needed, and then rain gauges. And that is the reason for the increase. You want to explain what they do?
Sure. We have two of them throughout town. We first implemented them for part of the I&I study that we were doing for the sanitary sewer system town-wide, and we opted to keep them. That helps us provide actually really good data on the rain. People trying to find it online we weren't getting accurate numbers. This actually provides us, 5-minute intervals as the rain comes down, so we can go back and look. And I use it for a lot of our storm drainage investigations too, which is nice. But it pinpoints when we're having peaks with our pumps also at our pump stations. So that's one of the nice features.
Okay.
So Ed, does that tell you, it's just a gauge, right? It doesn't tell you how much per hour, right?
It can tell you anything you want. You can break it down for an hour interval. You can go over the whole list. It'll give you max and min through that time period.
Overhead? It's the same as in, like, in the parking fund, we charge a share of all the insurance, the employee costs, are all contained within the fund. So, the general fund is not impacted by any of the, the employee benefits and such. And as we do these things on an individual basis, so you won't necessarily see the same changes or percentage changes as you would in the general fund, because we're looking at each individual and what coverages they have. What percentage of the pension belongs to them. Sewer material collection and treatment. This is our sewer crew. There are 3 employees there. And we're adding some money for training, increasing that, on the technology, et cetera. Otherwise, relatively unremarkable. Motor fuel up a little bit, based on the usage in that fund. But generally speaking, not much. The big one is the next one, the treatment. So this is where we pay Stanford for treatment of the sewage. And so Ed can explain to you how that.
How that works for us?
Yeah,
All right.
it can be a challenge.
So it's based on flow percentage, or whatever their treatment facility deals with or treats, if you will. Our number is a percentage of that, and that's how they charge us of their treatment costs, processing costs, capital investments. This one is going to see a large increase this year because they had a large project of just over $3 million, and they used their cash reserve instead of bonding it. So we own 15% of that $3 million, and we have to come up with that in a 12-month period.
And they didn't consult us beforehand.
Yeah, they were, they lacked the transparency that I wish we had on that, because I would have either tried to talk them out of doing that or not doing the whole thing, or at least show them what the impact was going to be for us. Maybe even made some adjustments in our payments back sooner. I did make an instant adjustment starting January, as soon as I went through their invoice. So for the next 3 months, we're going to pay almost $290,000, which is up from my original $290,000 a month, just to try to get caught up. Starting July 1st, we're going to go up to $300,000. We get the invoice in November. Come January next year, I'll decide whether I need to just do more catch-up, or did that new invoice give us credit based on our flows going down, hopefully going down. So that's the rationale, and I have to do that every year. Either catch up or use the credit that I've earned over the year.
And the other thing that we have to do, that Ed has to do, is keep on top of what they allocate to the treatment facility, to make sure that we're not paying for something that has nothing to do with our flow coming over and being treated.
Are any of those expenses treated as capital expenses? Not that we would bond them, but do you put them in capital if they're?
They're not our assets.
Okay.
Do we track the outflow, or do they track it and tell us what we?
They track it. They have to have their meter, as do we, have to have them calibrated and approved every July. So we get their certificate and they get ours. There's a trust factor there, but at least there's a calibration check. And then every month, there's a balancing too. If you see an abnormal number, they've brought it to our attention that they've had one. We've done the same thing when we found one with ours.
So Ed, all of the work you've done on the I&I, have you seen any reduction in the flow?
I hope to see one at the end of this year. The first project that we did finish was Old Kings Highway South. Not a whole lot of I&I to address. It was more for the structural integrity of that pipe. About 3,500 linear feet of it. So once we got that one taken care of, we're just getting started January 8th to start lining pipe. And we've been doing quite a bit over the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So I hope to see some as we go through. So this phase 2 of the construction rehab ends probably October, November of this year. We should be done with that phase.
Okay.
And just, I'd say a reminder that the sewer fund is self-sufficient, it doesn't take anything from taxes at all. Same thing with the parking operations fund on the state-owned lots. There's no tax dollars in there. All right. Go back to the general fund capital.
Kate,
Yes, Jeff?
before you go to the capital, is there any allocation in Public Works over to Great Island? Because we do have that special revenue fund, and I know from listening to the Great Island that Public Works is doing some work there.
We haven't put together the Great Island budget yet, so we can evaluate that as when we do it.
Okay.
All right. So we have the loader for $400,000. The loader is nearing the end of its useful life. It is 17 years old. And, well, I think we should replace it. The repairs get to be more, and it's getting difficult to find parts for it. So Ed proposed it. I agree that it should be replaced. New sidewalks. I don't know if you want to talk about where you would put the new sidewalks. I know you don't always like to give the list, but we do try and target the schools in the train stations, the commuter areas. But I believe we should do that. Go ahead.
Talk about?
Yeah.
These are, these three in particular, the 165 is going to cover what I would call filling in the gaps, if you will, where sidewalks end and they need to be completed to make it safer. So there is one on Tokenique from the I-95 off-ramp headed towards the school that's missing a section in there. And I'm going to do the part that is there all the way to the traffic signal at the school. So this will fill in that blank. Sedgwick is missing a section. We've been approached by the neighbors in that area to see if we can finish the part from the back of the office building to Mansfield Avenue. And Old Kings Highway South has a section right opposite Corbin as it comes out. There's a section in there that's missing the sidewalk. These three, they make perfect sense for me to
What
fill in.
about the one on Edgerton that goes down to West Avenue? Remember that guy came?
We have the funding for that already.
Okay.
Correct.
When is that scheduled?
I don't have it scheduled yet.
Okay.
Are all of these concrete?
Tokenique, yes. Sedgwick, I believe, is concrete. Old Kings Highway South, I believe, is concrete now.
When you say missing, do you mean they were never there, or they're just in such they were just never?
They were never there.
Okay.
It also asked for money for sidewalk rehabilitation. I did not put that forward because he has some substantial amounts from prior year's appropriations, and I'd like to see that get expended first before we continue to add to that. Paving program, continued, I think we need to keep on that schedule.
So I'm sorry, there's money sitting in a reserve or in fund balance that's,
There's money, because, well, capital doesn't lapse, right?
well,
So,
right, but
yes,
that's what I'm saying is this does not reflect that balance. Do you
this
know?
does not reflect that balance, no.
Okay. So we're just not adding to the reserves
I'm-
he has for, we're
correct.
not canceling sidewalk.
Not canceling anything, but just, there's a lot to do, and he has
Money
a
to
lot,
do.
of money to do it.
Fine. Okay.
Repave the post 53 lot that's at the Norton Heights train station, that is the upper lot, and we'd like to get that done, then we'll get the sidewalk installed down to the lower lot.
You have the money for the paving for the lower lot already?
So that's over by the depot?
No,
No,
50
it's on the
by
other
the
side,
post.
By
Across the
by post
street.
53.
Okay, the other side, okay.
Resurface the town hall gym. I think we should do it. I did, just so you know, I've been looking through the ARPA funds and have started to identify ones that can be reallocated or should be reallocated. And then I've also looked through this year's capital request to identify projects that might make good use of the ARPA funds. That 7,500, would be one.
Great.
Tree replacement program, I think we should keep with that. The small capital, we need to keep with that. And then design for the Old Kings Highway Bridge for repairs to it. I think we need to keep on top of our bridges and make sure that we get ahead of any repair work, identify it early. So, I agree with that one too. Parking capital,
Wait, Kate, what was the bottom one that you didn't approve?
Is that the bridge from the
30,000?
the traffic circle over to the gym, that bridge?
yeah, sorry. I thought that was one that could wait.
Okay.
That
It's
is
not
the-
in such bad shape like the stairs were? Or is it?
Well, I'm not an engineer. So.
The stairs were in bad shape, so we needed to do that.
The stairs were in bad shape.
But the
We
bridge
need
is
to do
not.
that. But, well, for one, there are other ways to get into that part of the building if we had to close it down. It's hard, it's really hard sometimes to pick through these and see what ones are needed. And sometimes you might say like, okay, doing the gym floor is a lower priority, but it's $7,500 opposed to $30,000. So that was a judgment I made.
But that's a cost that we could think of for ARPA.
Yes, I think, what we have to think of when we
Right.
reallocate money to ARPA funds, they have to be allocated no later than December 31st of this year. So that doesn't mean just assigned to a project. We need contracts signed with vendors. So in looking through capital projects to see what would be appropriate for ARPA money, we have to keep that in mind. Can we realistically get bid specs put together, get it, put out to bid, hire somebody, sign a contract by the end of the calendar year? And, thinking about some of those, like the workload that some departments do face normally. So outright purchases, like the loader might be a better choice,
Kate, on the offer, since, as an example, if we allocate 50,000 and we have something signed, but it has contingency in there, and we only spend 45. since
We're
it-
giving that 5 back to the federal government.
Exactly my point.
Yes.
So is it worthwhile on some of these projects to take out the contingency so that we have a lower amount of what we're allocating for ARPA? Because some of them are estimates with contingency, and then use we can have a conversation with the Board of Finance, use the, I believe it's about 600,000 Board of Finance capital contingency to cover any of those extra costs, just to make sure we're not giving anything back to the federal government, because I'd hate to do that.
Good idea.
You know, I would say that's one way to approach it. So yeah, it's something you could do.
All right.
Okay. Okay, parking capital. There's just one item in there for this year. Get this to open. Repaving the Norotan Heights lot, Norotan Heights North, and refresh me which side that is.
North side.
Yeah, okay. So Heights roadside.
Since the drainage is done.
Yep. Now that the drainage project is complete. And again, those funds come, these are all results of the operations of parking, so not a tax impact. And then last but not least would be the sewer capital. So a lot of this is just ongoing sewer things, pump replacements. We've been replacing pumps at the various pump stations on a regular basis. You can see that it's planned to happen every year. Chemical group control, same kind of thing. It's something we need to do on an ongoing basis. And then collection system rehab and the CMOM. If you want to explain maybe for people about the CMOM.
Okay. The CMON program is EPA guidelines and directives on how to maintain and operate your sanitary sewer system. And with that comes recommendations on keeping it clean, how often, how many, what percentage. So we're at, we do 10% a year now. This is our third year. We have 81 miles, so we have to do 8 miles every year and report that to the DEP. So that's part of the program. The other one is keeping policies and procedures in place for emergencies, down generators, and how do you address that, right down to public participation, how to get the word out, and how do we do about doing that.
And why does the cost jump
Yeah.
next year?
I have a balance in the CCTV account right now. So instead
We're
of,
bleeding off that balance.
I'm gonna use that. Help to offset some of the costs to the city of Stamford.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything else for Ed while we're on?
That's it. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you again for putting me first.
Certainly.
Appreciate it.
What's your pleasure for where to go next?
Well, we'll do police last, since I don't think the chief's here. Let's do the library next.
Okay.
Hi, how are you?
Happy to do the library next week. Not to do anything.
Excellent, all right. Thank you, Kate.
Let your system load up for the next one.
Well, actually, I do. Do we have the time? No, okay, we don't. We didn't load up your,
Okay, well, I have, hopefully all of you received, but I have paper copies, if that's helpful. I have a handout.
I'll take them. Thank you.
Kate, Jen, did you want copies?
I think I can.
All right, so good evening, everyone. As you know, I'm Kira Parrott from the library. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to present our budget proposal to all of you. I'm joined tonight by Hutch Pegler, our president of the Board of Trustees, various members of our board and leadership team. Make sure I got my facts straight. I'm happy to give you sort of a brief overview of our budget proposal and sort of the major drivers, if that's helpful. And feel free to ask questions as I go. So just very briefly before I get into the specific numbers for our proposal, just 3 important things and sort of refreshers about the library's budget. Number one, we have a lean, mean budget. We don't build any contingencies into our budget. We continually look every single year for improving our efficiencies, being as lean and cost effective as possible. I'm happy to say that I was able to make some cuts last minute and send Kate a revised budget, which brought the number slightly lower as a result of sort of a last hard look at some of our facilities and other costs, which I'll go into in a bit. Number 2, Darien Library exists and has for many generations because of the public partnership that we have with the town of Darien, its taxpayers in the form of the annual grant that we receive from all of you, and the Friends of the Library who contribute every year to our annual campaign and fundraising efforts. And it's really that special partnership, that public-private partnership that has enabled us to continue being an award-winning, high-performing, and I would say very best library in the state of Connecticut, and I would wager the nation. And finally, the funds that we receive in the form of the annual town grant are used exclusively for the following categories: staffing, which is the largest percentage of our annual operating budget; benefits for our full-time staff, which is the second largest chunk of our budget; building operations, which are things like utilities and the annual maintenance costs to operate the building and the premises; and library support, which is mostly a small line, but the largest chunk of which is used for the supplies and the labor required to process all of the materials that we circulate and get them shelf-ready and available. For the fiscal year 2024-25, we are asking for a total dollar increase of $169,731, which is a 3.8% increase over the current fiscal year. On page 4 of the presentation is where you'll see that little chart that has the breakdown of all of the major budget categories, the dollar amount increase and the percentage increase for each of those categories. I do want to draw your attention both to building operations and library support, which are both decreases. So before I talk about the increases, I make sure you notice that. And I'll talk a little bit more. Thank you.
Shine a big light on that.
Very proud of those decreases. I'll tell you more how I was able to achieve that. But first, the areas that are increasing, I'll start with our staffing. The detail begins on page 5, and then there's also a lot of supporting information back in Appendix A, which starts on page 16. Our budget strategy for staffing remains pretty much the same since I've been doing this budget presentation over the last 3 years, which is our goals are basically twofold. One, to compensate our employees appropriately and to avoid excessive, really disruptive, and frankly, expensive turnover. We acknowledge that some turnover in organizations is normal, is healthy, but what we want to avoid is a situation where we can't retain really great staff and we can't attract really wonderful staff because our salaries are getting too far out of step with our local peer libraries in the region. One thing we always aim to do every fiscal year is to keep our head count flat, which we are. We are not adding any positions, and we are not adding any part-time hours in this proposal. We do move hours, particularly part-time hours, around as needed. We take a look every single year at what our usage is, where the flow of traffic and programs and events and services are, and we do reallocate sort of things around, but there's no change in our FTE. The way we construct our salary line every year is through the collection of data and a pretty comprehensive analysis of that data. So every single year, as the very first step in our budget development, we do a compensation review. And we use data from a range of sources, including the Connecticut Library Association salary benchmark study, the self-reported data that's part of the Connecticut State Library annual statistical report, as well as information that's more hyper-local, so job postings for our competitor and peer libraries in the region, as well as the information that's in a lot of the collective bargaining agreement and contracts. Detailed on page 6 and 7, as well as back in that Appendix A is more information about that compensation data and analysis. If you listened to my presentation last year and the year before, this will sound familiar. Our major challenge when it comes to salaries at the library is just keeping pace, not falling too far behind our peers, particularly here in Lower Fairfield County. And the challenge there is that most of our peers have salary step increases built into their contracts. And so what that means for us is that even where our starting salaries are comparable or even slightly better than our friends in, let's say, Greenwich and Westport, what happens over those first few years of employment, particularly the first 5 to 7 years, is when those folks are eligible for those increases, that's when we fall behind. And over time, the gap sort of increases, and that's the challenge. This year, our grant request includes a 3.96% increase in the salary line. So I want to break that up for you, what's in there. The majority of our library employees will be eligible for up to a 3% merit increase, pending performance, their annual performance evaluation. That is what we've been articulating for the last, this will be year 3. That we've come to you and said, if we can keep pace at 3%, that'll help most of our people from falling too far behind. This year, we have a small pool of employees, about 14%, which is about 10 individuals, who have been identified as green, what I call the green circle. So these folks meet 2 criteria. They have been identified as falling far below the minimum benchmark for their position, level of education, and so on. And they've been identified as being high priority in terms of maintaining our essential library services and or meeting our strategic goals. So librarians and library staff who meet those 2 criteria would be eligible in this proposal for a slightly higher than 3% increase in order to help them just get to that or get closer to that minimum benchmark. On page 7, you'll see some examples of some of the comparative salary data that I'm talking about. And I think a really salient example is a recent job posting for a children's library at the Ferguson Library in Stamford. This salary range was for a professional librarian, so someone who has a master's degree in library and information science, children's librarianship with at least 2 years of experience. And the range was from about 75 to 97. And the median there, we found, was pretty consistent among other libraries in the region. That sort of low 80s, 82 and change, was fairly consistent for that type of position at that level. By contrast, if you look at our employees who meet or exceed those qualifications and criteria, we're looking at $74,000 a year. So not only below the median, but below that minimum sort of range. And that's sort of what we're trying to address. We're not trying to outpace our peers. We're not trying to jump beyond them. We're not trying to be super competitive. And I'll talk more about some of the other great things we can offer our employees, but we're just trying not to fall too far below. So this salary initiative in this budget would include the ability to make those 10 individuals eligible, pending performance, to have that bump up to be closer to benchmark. That initiative will cost about $29,600. Keeping the rest of our employees eligible for up to 3% increase totals about $83,000. So year over year, what we're talking about in the salary line is an increase of about $113,000. We do believe that spending and investing that now and taking this corrective action sooner rather than later will not only help us sort of better manage that salary line moving into the future so that we're keeping pace and not falling too far behind and getting into a bad situation, come year 4 or 5, but it also, again, help retain that essential talent and frankly, really disruptive turnover and losing people that we really cannot afford to lose. So that's, I went really quickly, sorry, but that's the salary. I'm happy to pause there before I jump into benefits. Yeah.
Well, I guess that was going to be my question. How do we compare in terms of our benefit package compared to
Yeah,
neighboring
so
communities?
the excellent thing is that we do have a wonderful benefits package. We are part of the town pension, our full-time employees are part of the town pension plan, which is phenomenal. We have a very good health care plan. And so I think, the argument that we are able to make to both existing and prospective employees is, here's the deal. We're not going to be able to pay you necessarily as much as you're going to get paid over there or over there or over there. But we have great benefits, and we are the best library ever, and you're going to have a wonderful experience here. And I think that is an argument that is true and will continue to work for us. Again, as long as the gap doesn't get too far, we can say, look, we're meeting the minimum benchmark. Realistically, we just got to kind of keep pace with that minimum benchmark. We're not gonna be able to frog leap over that. But our benefits and I think our environment and the empowerment and sort of innovation that happens at the library is enough to sort of help us keep pace.
And the director.
Well, thank you. More questions on salary, or I could jump into the benefits. Good segue. So the benefits, it's our second largest portion of our budget. The big drivers there, of course, are the retirement contribution and then healthcare. Like I said, we're very fortunate and we're very pleased to be part of the pension plan. It was a much higher percentage increase than we were hoping. I was hoping maybe 3 or 4%. It's more like 14%. That's an is what it is kind of situation. So there you have it. On the healthcare side, I am pleased to report that we received some good news. We were initially budgeting, I think, a 7% increase. Then they got back to us and said we're actually looking at 3 to 5 or 3 to 5.5, and then they said it was a little lower. So right now we're budgeting for a 5% increase there. I am hopeful that when they finalize those numbers in April, it might even come a little lower, so we might have more good news down the road. We are part of the Connecticut State Partnership Plan. The administrator is Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. It has been so far a very good value for us, for an organization of our size. Our employees really like the plan, and so far the increases have been relatively modest compared to other places. So, but I always stay in good contact with Kate about what she's looking at, and if there's ever opportunities for us to collaborate, do something different, we're open to it. This is just a quick side note on benefits. This is maybe old news, but I thought I would just mention it for this body. One thing on benefits is a few years ago, we did completely overhaul and update all of our employee policies in our employee handbook. And one of the big policies we changed was our vacation policy. So those of you who were around back then might recall, we had this vacation policy that allowed sort of unlimited rollover and, which had then to be paid out upon termination. That was changed around 2020, and we now have a use it or lose it policy and zero liability. So just wanted to be clear that you need not worry about the library when it comes to that
How is
particular
that working
benefit.
with staffing needs? Do you find everybody's using their vacation and now you don't have enough to staff the library?
No, I think, we I think have a good policy in terms of how much gets accrued, and we, people pitch in. There are definitely times in the summer where, we're a little lean because everyone wants to be on vacation at the end of July or August or whatever, but we make it work, and we have, thankfully, a good, part-time staff. And, one thing that we had been slowly kind of incrementally increasing prior to the last 2 years was our part-time budget. So having that, professional part-time support for nights, for weekends during the year, but also for, times when some of the full-time staff are out makes a huge difference. And having that degree part-time staff is very helpful.
That's always the fear of making it a use it or lose it. People will use it
Right.
when they don't really need to use it.
Right. And we try to, now we have an part-time HR manager, sending reminders throughout the year, like, everyone, please don't all use your vacation the last week of December. You're not going to get approved for that. So any questions or comments on benefits before I?
5.85% in the library budget versus 20% in the town budget it's a big difference. I know there are reasons for that, but still.
Let me know if you want to hear about the CT partnership plan. I can introduce you to our rep.
I'm not sure we can do a whole lot better than that in town. We got other problems, but anyway, that's good that your number is that low.
Yeah, I was pleased with that. On the building operations, again, I'm delighted we're down, which is always nice. This is mainly due to the fact that we were able to identify a couple different maintenance expenses that could be deferred. John, I know you were on the record as not liking deferred maintenance, and I agree with you. However, we did identify a few things that seemed responsible and reasonable to defer. So things like tree trimming is a good example where, I took another pass at the budget and I said, do we have to do that every year? I mean, the tree guys would say yes, but I think, that's something where you could go to an every other, even every 3 year kind of pacing. So that was the sort of like fine analysis we did on all of our facilities and operations. I also took another look at our utilities. So when I was first developing this budget back in the summer, Aquarian, there were all these news reports about Aquarian going for a 19% increase. I have subsequently read that the regulatory bodies that govern that said, no, we're not doing that. So I had originally built, I think, in a 10% increase. So I went back and I just adjusted to reflect prior year actuals. And we'll, hopefully that remains true. Yeah, so other than that, I think, the building operations are, relatively good. Where I could, I broke up based on some feedback from last year. We used to have things like electricity and gas in a single line. And same thing with water and sewer. A request was made to sort of separate those out moving forward. So moving forward, we will have those separated out as distinct line items. And library support, which is a bunch of very small lines that are flat. The real change there is in materials processing. These are the supplies and the labor necessary to prepare all of the materials for the shelf so that they can circulate. We just adjusted that down a little bit this year. You can see we raised that, and I just given the current year actuals, I don't know that we're going to need 98, so I adjusted it back down to the prior year approved budget. I think that will be more than sufficient.
You haven't actually changed the process?
No,
Okay.
no. But I think we're getting back to our normal pacing of buying and acquisition, so we can sort of, there was a period of time where we were playing a little bit of catch up because we hadn't been receiving many materials due to COVID and delays and all sorts of things out of our control. So I think, we had anticipated buying a whole bunch of things, to sort of make up for lost time, and now we're kind of getting back to normal. And finally, risk management. That is part of something we are covered under the town's insurance. So I don't think I've received a final number just yet from Jen, so I put in 5.5 because that's what market predictions were sort of saying.
Reasonable.
And that's, okay, so great. Finally, there's a lot of other information here, history on the grant, the Friends of the Library. Just a quick note on Friends regarding that public-private partnership. We raise over $1.2 million each year, and that funding is used to purchase all of the things, all of the stuff of the library, the books, the materials. It funds all of the programming we do, all of the free events, all the technology in the building, and upgrading that technology, as well as services like our on-site notaries, the partnership we have with other organizations like VITA that provides free tax preparation services. Note, we just started that, so if you need your taxes prepared, you can come to the library and get that done for free with a real CPA. Teen study nights and all of that stuff. Over the last couple years, we've also spent about $2.6 million in capital improvements, including updating the geothermal, new HVAC, air handlers, new carpeting, lots of different things to improve our efficiencies and sort of maximize and improve the existing spaces. We estimate that we will be investing more than $2 million over the next few years, pending results of our fundraising efforts and endowment performance. And finally, if you haven't read, I think it's on page 15, the little excerpt from Eric Kleinenberg's Palaces for the People. I encourage you to do so. It's also a great book about the power of public libraries and the impact that we have in communities. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Kira, this is not on our budget, but on the funds, I saw that a couple of years ago it was flat, and then last year, did you have a change in fundraising to attribute the increase to?
Well, we did increase our fundraising goal in the current fiscal year, so we are aiming to raise more money. One thing that we did raise on the Friends side specifically was the amount and the percentage of money we allocate to salaries and benefits. So that's one thing I didn't mention this year, but I have in years prior. The vast majority of our salaries and benefits sit in the town grant, but for anyone who is involved in fundraising, indirect, board support, things that sort of wouldn't be appropriate for taxpayers to fund, that is money that we allocate from the Friends budget. So
And you increased
we
that?
have increased that because we are doing more fundraising and we are really sort of kind of stepping up and professionalizing some of our fundraising efforts, and that required
Looks like it's
a little more
paying off.
investment. I hope
Yeah.
so.
Well, you have great programs.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you very
disappointed when
much.
that doing golf
I
this year.
know.
But you know
Oh, well, you're,
what? Maybe we
come by on Saturday or Sunday.
have a second.
Were we just excluded? Should we take that into account?
No, no, you gotta come by. Uh-oh.
We've got a tea time for you.
That was a nice change in setup.
I have no other questions.
No, we appreciate, as always, the thoroughness with which you guys prepare your budget and the detail behind it, so thank you.
Absolutely. If there's anything else.
You guys get to take the cut because the numbers came in after we kind of squared, the president's budget away, so you
Thanks,
guys
Kate.
get the.
Yeah, because it was 180 to 80.
Yeah, it was higher when
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
initial one, so
Yeah, it's not a big cut.
surprise. Yeah, it's not, but,
You get to have it.
yeah, there you
It's
go.
gone.
I'm not gonna tell them. I need the brownie points.
Thanks, Kira,
Yeah,
thank you.
appreciate it. All right, next up is Parks and Rec.
So we have with this, Jim Cogman, who's our assistant director. And, we need to go a little easy, because this wasn't he didn't prepare the budget, so.
You can go hard.
I had a howitzer ready to go.
I can take it. I can take it. I do, before you start, I do want to thank our Park and Recreation Commission members and the RTM committee members from Park and Rec for being here. Lori Bora, our chairman of our Park and Rec Commission, cannot be here. She's ill, but she would love to be here, so.
She'll text if she doesn't like something.
Yeah, I'm
I'm sure
sure
she's probably watching, so.
All right. We'll start in administration. So this is the office staff.
Because then it slows everybody down.
Okay, so no, you're seeing no increase here because this is a combination of non-reps, so you wouldn't see the wage increase budgeted, and a town hall union employee who's at the top step. Their contract is about to be under negotiation, so you don't see any increases for the town hall union employees unless they're getting steps. Part-time, we do have an
I'm
increase.
sorry, that would hold for the rest, for the fiscal year, or would there be an adjustment you'll make prior to the RTM vote to reflect any negotiations?
One would, if we do not settle the contract by July 1st, I would
Then no.
assume the union will ask as part of their proposal to have retroactive pay, so that's part of the negotiations.
Okay.
We did have an increase in rate for the part-timers this year.
Are we
Slight,
adding more or?
no, no. Slight bump in travel costs for the staff. That includes the water coordinators, waterfront coordinators. Training services, this is an increase for the crew, training them on new equipment. It's also OSHA training, and some of the staff members have to maintain certifications. Some increases in dues, minor, $70. And then office supplies, it appears to be an increase, big increase, but what they're doing here is they need to purchase new credit card readers for the office. And I think you have one at the Paddle Hut as well? Yeah.
And two at
At
the
the
security
beaches.
booths as well.
So it's a total of $1,900, and, kind of debated whether or not that belonged in the operating, but it's not enough to qualify for capital, so you'll see that big increase this year, and that will go away next year. Beach and court facilities, and it might mess you up, Tim, but we're going alphabetically.
I got you.
You're getting up faster than I am. Okay. Part-time salary. These are the paddle hut attendants. And then the big chunk, the 125,000, those are our lifeguards. We do build in some incentives for people who are coming back. They will cost us more. So, yeah, some of this kind of washes out when we get to the end, depending on how many people come back from prior years, can impact what that cost actually is. Security services, that is down because last year we had budgeted the, what do we call them, the monitor, the park monitor in that account. And it's been moved for the current year. So this one, the operating supplies, what kind of kills me here, the paper supplies, the increase in the paper and cleaning supplies is significant. But that is what we're seeing happening in the current year for the costs at the beaches. And otherwise, that's all the increases there. Grounds, fields, and buildings. Okay, so this is one where the Parks and Rec Commission had asked for $45,000 to implement a standard of care. There was no detail presented as to how that $45,000 would be expended, allocated, not this much per park. So I cut the increase without any support for how the money was going to be spent. I felt I couldn't.
Which line would that have been?
It's the very first line, the groundskeeping.
Groundskeeping,
The
okay.
18,000, they had asked for 45. But there was nothing to tell us how that the additional 27,000 was going to be spent.
Jim?
I think part of it is with some of the invasive work that we've done and continue to do. I think that was,
It's actually in a different account.
well, but part of that would be once the invasives are removed, going in and maybe the increase should be in there too, going in and whether it's maintaining those areas that we've cleared up or planting seed, things like that. I think that was a good chunk of the increase there.
I'm not opposed to the concept, but that was a large ask without saying, we're going to spend X per park, or we're, this much on seeds, this much on plants. And in a year when the budget is already up quite a bit. That was a hard one to.
Was this something that you and Pam drove, or was this a commission ask, or where did this originate?
Yeah, well, I think
My understanding was it was the commission.
I think it's a combination of both. Sorry, I'm Kathy Long, Patty for the commission. Hi. And I'm going to ask my fellow commissioners to say something, but I think it was a combination of both. We're seeing an increased amount of invasives throughout our park systems. It's costly for Jim's team to remove them. And it's costly to actually then improve the places where they're removed with new plants. All those things are increasing in costs. The invasives are going up because of climate change. We're seeing more sort of invasives coming in, they're spreading throughout our parks, and we're trying to better our parks and getting a standard of care where we do have sort of high-level parks throughout the town. And some of the money was also going to beautification, doing things in our parks and planting certain areas, so like we've done at Pear Tree Point. So it is like a better entrance and things like that.
And again, I have no, the concept is wonderful, but there was nothing supporting how that dollar amount was arrived at, how it would be used. And like I said, in a year where we're seeing tremendous increases elsewhere, I couldn't support it. Pest control is the.
Just on that point, not saying we put that back, but just as a general matter, do you guys have the expertise in-house to identify these invasives, think about how to take them out so that they don't come back?
Yes.
Plant something that's not invasive and come up with sort of a general scheme or plan to kind of coordinate all of this? And do you use third parties for that?
I'm currently serving as the chairman of the invasives group, and we've reconfigured it in the last month, let's say. I have 10 members now sitting on the committee. 3 of them are master gardeners. And if you understand what that means, these are all people who have taken year-long classes under the auspices of the University of Connecticut, passed exams and so on, and in order to maintain the status of master gardener, they have to give back to different communities so many hours per year and so on. So they are very knowledgeable.
Okay. And has that group come up with, say, a written plan that says this is how we're going to tackle this? This is the issue with, say, this particular park asset, and in order to go from where it is now, which we don't like, to where we want it to be, here's kind of a multi-step plan that includes things we're taking out, what we're replacing, and all that. Is that done kind of by park asset?
About a year and a half ago, we did come up with a plan. We identified specific areas at Cherry Lawn that we wanted to tackle in terms of the invasives. And we designated 3 different areas, A, B, C, and we aggressively went after A and B, and we have reclaimed a significant amount of park space. We've also done the same thing down at Weed Beach and recovered a very significant amount of land that was totally unusable before, which is now, it's gorgeous in the sense that you can actually see the water from different areas when you couldn't in the past.
Okay.
So I'm in the process of putting together a much more specific plan, something, a hard copy that you can actually see. We have taken pictures in terms of what we've been able to accomplish, and it's very significant. I'm disappointed that you all haven't seen it, but
I'd like to see it. Are they
And-
posted
and-
for public review? Or are they available for folks to see?
we're in the process of putting that together. We're also doing a major education program for the town as far as identifying these different invasive species, kind of cluing people in that they shouldn't buy them in the first place. I've talked to the garden center. He's doing a special program for us, basically saying, don't buy this, get rid of this, but here's what you should substitute it with, and so on, for the general public, which I think will be very helpful.
Okay. Questions?
Another educational
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Okay.
opportunity.
Please.
Okay, so, pest control staying stable, that's the geese chasing, tree maintenance staying stable, facility repair and maintenance. We are seeing an increase there, 12%, 14,000. This is all sorts of things, concession equipment repair maintenance, the fence repairs, the playground mulch, paddle court repairs, refuse contract. There's an amount in there for removing the invasives. So I did reduce the request to reduce the amount of the increase. I did cut 15,000, did not specify where from, but the increase was substantial and felt, I needed to scale that back.
Is that because the plan for spending the money was insufficient, or just a general judgment that
Both. There, like $45,000 for removing the invasives. It doesn't really, you don't know, like last year, a lot of it was done by our staff, which was great. But we don't have, like where we're going next and how they arrived at 45,000. But it was also that, the account is still going up 12%, which is significant. And just could not sustain the larger increase. Because there were some areas where we have to sustain the large increase. Telecommunication, that's staff phones, that's the Cablevision data and lines to the beach. Go ahead.
$9,900 for Cablevision for Weed Beach?
That is, it's the fire alarm. It's not just the Cablevision. So it's the phone lines there, it's the
Okay,
fire
because what
alarm
we can
lines.
see is very different from what you can see in your data, unfortunately.
Oh, you can't
No.
expand it?
You
No.
see the exact same thing.
If you click on it, you should be able to expand.
You
No,
gotta
she can't.
use
yeah.
the caret all the way on the left of the account, and it will open up the explanations, all the itemizations. That account that you have highlighted,
Yeah?
I don't know if you can see
If
it
you
on
look
the
at what
screen.
she's doing.
So there's a little caret,
Yes.
and if you click on that,
Yes, I've done that, and I've gotten the lines, but now I'm in the line of 9,900.
And
And
it won't
I,
open up for you?
no.
you're in facility repair.
I'm in grounds, fields, and building expenses?
It's under, it's under
Telecommunications.
Yeah.
It's the subline of 9,900.
Have you scrolled all the way over to the right, because it may be,
Correct. I'm only allowed to view. I can't do,
yeah, this is still viewing. We'll take a look at it.
Yeah.
great.
But you know, but it should be broken out
Mm-hmm.
because that is multiple,
I'm like, because if Cablevision is charging us $9,900
Right.
for a fire alarm for Weed Beach, wow.
right, so it's not just that. So it does need to be broken out better.
Okay.
Portable toilets, we have added porta potties. And I believe the new ones are at, that's potable water.
McGuan.
McGuan.
Because the bathhouse is not open frequently enough?
That's a good question. I didn't ask that.
I think
I mean,
for,
there's public
I think
bathrooms
it's
there.
also for, with the new playground, they're seeing more usage, and so I think it's during those winter months as well,
Okay,
so, when the bathrooms aren't open.
okay.
Yeah.
On the good front, seeing decreases in some of the utilities and waste containers. That's a matter of how many they buy each year. So they didn't need them this year. I'm going to go to, if we're all done, more questions there. Organized recreation and events.
No, it's not visible. We'll figure it out later.
Oh, you can see this.
There's really not much of a change here. Some part-time salary.
I may not have the same capability that you do.
And slight reduction in the programming and event expenses.
Let me go back into it.
So not much change there from the current year. And then recreation facilities maintenance. This is where you'll find the Parks and Rec crew. So we have contract increases, and I believe we have a step in there, but we may be able to adjust this. I was informed today that one of our parks maintainers has resigned.
Yep.
We're losing him to his true love, the fire department. Worthy cause, right? But so we'll,
You have to replace him though.
we have to replace him, yeah, so. Probably was a parking ranger.
So this is a
I'm
parking
not kidding you.
ranger hire.
This is what happens, you know, somebody leaves Parks and Rec and the parking rangers go to Parks and Rec. So we will recalculate that salary line dropping. As you can see, we have a lot of great step 3 parks maintainers, so one will be reduced to a step 1. Seasonal and temporary, I think that's just an issue of the ability to hire people seasonally. Clothing allowance, we talked about why that's going up throughout the union. And then operating supplies, it looks like a large dollar amount, but it's not, or a large percentage, but it's not really, it's a small dollar amount. So otherwise, nothing terribly remarkable there. As you know, Parks and Rec has revenue. So here we see the beaches and court facilities, that's primarily the beach stickers and beach parking permits, paddle court revenue, boat permits, pickleball, and then rental for the paddle building.
So so how does it work with tennis? So no one pays for tennis, or you just get a pass, or how does that?
So, yeah, the tennis courts, we allow residents to block it out for the season. So if you wanted to play every Thursday at 6 o'clock, you could block it out for the season. That's the revenue for that line item.
Where do you account for that?
It would have
It's
to
in
be.
a different order, and I
Yeah.
don't know why it was ever put there. It's in grounds, fields.
Grounds, fields, and buildings?
Yeah.
Maybe because their tennis courts are not necessarily at the beach.
Could be.
So tennis court revenue,
Not very much.
not very much.
Would it, I mean, obviously it doesn't matter for the cycle, but ultimately would it make sense to go to a system for paddle and pickle where residents pay like a one-time seasonal fee and then make their reservations at whatever the policy is, as opposed to then spending money so we can collect the money on a per usage
basis. So the way our system is now, we don't have a membership module.
Right.
We would have to look into getting that. So that's why it's a per usage fee.
Do you know if any other towns do it that way? I mean, so
Some-
we could analyze whether that would actually result in increased income for us?
I looked at New Canaan because New Canaan has a membership for their paddle facility and paddle courts, and based on roughly their charges, we would lose revenue based on, there were those folks that would benefit that play all the time. If they get a membership, that's great, but the person who's playing twice a week isn't going to see that benefit. They didn't sell enough memberships to make it worth doing. If it was at around the same charges.
I listened to a commission meeting recently, and I know they're thinking about another survey, even though like they had done one last year. That might be something to put in a survey if they're doing one anyway. I'm not advocating spending money to do another survey on this one issue.
It's a private business, but the Stanford Town Center pickleball guys, Pickleball USA, whoever runs that, I think it's a $200 annual fee, and they charge $67 an hour, I think, to play versus the $20 that we charge. So different.
Very different.
Okay, so we have also have the park facility permit revenue. And then under organized recreation events, program fees, rent for town hall, and then also the 280, that's the net of the Park and Rec program fund, where the self-supporting programs run through that fund, and the net profits come back to the general fund to cover all the overhead and expense.
Does the program revenue cover the program costs as we define them? And what
Yes.
caused the $17,000 drop in town hall rent?
Don't know what caused the drop.
Art Center rent.
Art Center, oh, they've increased usage of the Mather Center.
Yeah.
They have, huh? Okay.
So what does that mean? They're just using the facility less?
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
using less space?
They use the second floor dance room.
Yep.
I don't think they're using as many hours as they were in previous year.
Okay.
Are they going anywhere else? Are they using space somewhere else in town?
I don't know that. I'm not sure.
That's a big number. I'd like to know more.
Yep.
Okay, what else on Parks and Rec, anything?
There's going to be capital.
Oh, capital, right.
Okay. Okay. So the first one is the repaving the nature center driveway. The driveway's, well, it's not great. I think this needs to be done. It's deteriorating, becomes icy. I think there's a safety risk. So, and this is something that they asked for last year. We didn't fund it. I think we should do that.
So I saw that this past week, and I would agree with that.
Yeah. Fix the rock foundation along the overflow parking, not a high priority, but a low cost to fix something that I think it's unattractive and it's only going to get worse. So I did agree with that. Traffic study, this would be for Cherry Lawn to evaluate whether they could relocate or add a driveway. Let me just get down to the actual, because there are traffic and parking issues there. They're worried about the infrastructure being able to support the number of visitors there. Can we change the traffic flow, the means of entrance and egress in any way? So they want to do a traffic study to assess whether that can be done. I think it's worthwhile doing.
Is that going to include the nature center? Because when I visited with them, they've got two issues. One is when you enter Cherry Lawn, you kind of turn right down to the nature center. They have kind of a circle that goes in front of the nature center next to their parking lot. And so at pickup times, if they're picking up or dropping off little kids that are there, it's problematic. So I don't know if in the traffic study that they could include that, just to see if there's anything they could do different with that.
Yeah,
Maybe
I think
not,
it would be intended to address the whole
all of that,
situation.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then they also asked about parking. Apparently there's some other parking that they had access to for their employees a while back, and that recently the town said, no, you can't park there anymore. And so their employees are having to park back at the nature center parking lot, which is tight. And they just asked if that could be reconsidered. I don't know anything about it, but that was a request. So maybe we can connect about that. I'd just like to learn more.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's something for the Park and Rec Commission. I remember when it happened, and
Something's happened, and I don't have history on all that, so
yeah.
maybe you could brief me at some point, and then I can go to the commission, and you guys just think about it.
The study is addresses the congestion that we're having at Cherry Lawn, so it's all
of that,
all traffic, including nature center.
Okay.
Okay. Repair cracks on the basketball court. Basketball court isn't all that old, but
Yeah, when was this put in? Was it
within
22?
the last few years.
Yeah.
This is a court that's a year and a half old?
Yes, it's asphalt.
And is it because the ground is freezing and moving underneath? What's happening?
Don't know why it's happening.
Is there not enough material underneath? I don't understand.
Well, it is, I think it's put in about 2 years ago, and it's an asphalt, so you're going to get cracking, whatever it might be. So it's, whether it's a tennis court or a basketball court, when it's asphalt,
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen, unfortunately.
Well, perhaps, you can look at exactly how it's built, because to use a poor expression, if it was built on the cheap, then that's going to be a recurring problem if you pave over it. Maybe take a look to see what it would take to do it right, so it wouldn't require maintenance every 2 years. I don't know, I'm trying to think in town what areas we have other outdoor courts where that aren't subject to.
Well,
as
some of the
frequent as-
post-tension concrete, I mean, they don't have the same issues, but what the write-up indicates, they looked at the other options and
Okay.
felt that patching, doing a repair was the most cost-effective solution. Looked at the damage and other types of costs and what their long-term effectiveness would be. My thought was not to wait. If we have cracks, let's get them fixed before they get worse.
Well, I know, I mean, you see people using them all the time. I mean, it's a popular court with, younger folks and, kids in college coming back. It seems like a place where they go and play
Yeah.
outside.
And the repair that is recommended is almost like a mesh that goes over the crack, so it's intended to last for several years, as opposed to just going in and blowing out the cracks and having your typical crack repair. This is a little bit more of a heavy-duty one, so hopefully we won't see cracking like this for several years.
Yeah, the estimate is that this repair would last for 7 to 10 years. Doesn't mean that other cracks won't appear elsewhere.
Thank you.
Jim, has there ever been any thought on the basketball court of putting pickleball lines on?
No, I know there's a pickleball committee now that's formed, so that might be something that they would have to entertain, but
Is it the right size?
you could probably fit a court or two on that surface, yeah.
Just wondering when you're doing this.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Monica's looking for more opportunities.
Yeah, no, that's,
I believe the committee chairman might be taking notes.
there we go.
We have $11,000 to replace the fence at Baker Park. I think it's more of an aesthetic issue than serious danger, but there are some holes in the fence, and little fingers and hands could get caught in there. Replacing the backstop at Holohan, it's unattractive. It would make for better play if we replaced it, but it's not currently a safety issue. So I felt that was one we could hold off on, because we are looking at quite a few capital projects here. I also do try and balance, like, how much stuff can they get done? Safety, the security cameras at Weed Beach. There were two potential solutions. One would be cheaper, but Pam wasn't sure if they could actually do that one. But in light of all the other things, I thought this one, maybe we could hold off on. I should have put it into one of the out years, didn't, but.
Was that request because there's an uptick in vandalism and kids
Yes.
hanging out?
Yeah. Stripping the paddle court paint. This is an ongoing, multiple year project that I felt we should continue doing. The gatehouse needs to be replaced. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'll let you finish your sentence. I have a question about it.
Okay, gatehouse needs to be replaced.
If the bid is $35,000, why is the line item $50,000?
It's a quote, for one, not a bid. But it's not just, I believe the quote was for the facility. I'm going to get down to that actual. But then you have to install it.
Understood.
So let me move it there. Okay. One more.
Page 37 of 50. I don't know if
Sorry.
it's helpful or not. Amount.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry I didn't ask that question.
All right, so we'll hear back.
Yep.
Thank you, Jim. And then I have questions on the next two, so.
Okay. Okay, this one was one I thought long and hard about, the repair of the tennis wall in the court. at Weed Beach. This is, as you're coming in to the park. I went with including it, one of the reasons being that it's visible as you come in. And felt that, that's part of the issue, because it looks pretty bad.
I don't argue for a need, but the email as supporting documentation for 135,000 is probably not enough for me.
Okay. Okay.
I'd love to see some broken out.
This was also one of those things that I thought if we wanted to take things out, fund through ARPA, it would be a
good candidate.
possible candidate, yeah.
But that's the
Okay.
right question. We
It
should look at.
definitely needs to be done. I think we've postponed it for a couple of years.
I don't argue it doesn't, but I'd rather see,
A better
it could
quote.
be 150,000. We don't, I'd like to have something.
More detail.
Jim, do you
Correct.
think there's anybody that we could
Yeah.
reach out to?
I'll reach out to
Yeah.
somebody. Yep.
I'm sure Jay would be happy to
Yeah.
put something together.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Meadow and Trail. So we are, this is an estimate. So we are waiting on the bid specs from our consultant. If you recall, last year we funded the project to design, basically to write the bid specs for us. So we were anticipating them coming in like a week or two ago, but waited till after planning and zoning had the hearing and see what kind of comments they had. So we should be getting the bid specs the end of this week or next week. We will then put it out to bid with language that says it's contingent upon approval of funding. And then about 4 to 6 weeks after that, we'll have a number. Actually, it should be 4 weeks. So while the Board of Finance is working on it, we'll have a number. And at that point, we can make a serious decision as to whether or not we go forward with that. So unfortunately, I don't believe it'll be ready by the time you're proposing a budget to the Board of Finance. But before we get past the Board of Finance, we'll have a number and know what the reality is. So I've left it in there, but assumed that it would be bonded by the Board of Finance. But I think it's a real, until we have bids back, I don't think we can commit to it, so.
So 3 years ago on this, I said I support the idea of this project, but I haven't seen numbers yet. And I'm leery of putting 635 in if it's 1.2 million. And I would really
So, you all can take it out.
Very interested to see when they come in.
Yeah, I mean, I've left it in there. I think there's a lot of support for the project. But I don't, without knowing the numbers.
We need to develop the space. We've been talking about it for a long time, years.
Yeah.
But this was in the budget. We sat on Zoom in January 2021. And I would love to see a plan for it.
Yeah, well, by the end of February, early March, we should have a serious number, and then we'll know.
What's been approved is the planning and zoning plan. So the planning and zoning plan gives you kind of the sandbox to play in. Within that sandbox, you can make adjustments. You can make planning adjustments, you can make surface of the trail adjustments. There's lots of that, and there's a lot of discussions going on about that. And so what this bid would come in would be an attempt to meet what's sort of in the plan currently.
Yes.
In terms of design, construction, and all of that. And we think it's directionally like that for the scaled down plan that they've ended up with, but to your point, we don't know. And
I come from the HHR committee.
But
this is the exact same sentence I said 3 years ago.
Fair
Believe
point.
me, I totally get it, but let's see what they say, and we'll have a more firm number later. So this is exclusive, though, of community fund support for this, correct?
Correct.
Okay, which is?
I believe,
370.
I thought it was 350.
350, yeah.
350.
Is that a guaranteed still?
My understanding is that it's still there.
Yes, it is.
And as I said, what I'm recommending to you to put forth is that it be funded through bonding. But that's actually a Board of Finance decision.
Yeah, let them make that call.
So,
I've said my piece, thank you.
yeah. No, I
Let's
hear
take a
you.
look and see what the
know,
bid numbers
Yeah,
are.
I'm literally very interested
Yep.
in hearing.
I've seen too many projects be estimated, and then the reality is, and not just HHR.
No, no,
Okay?
but that's why I said this 3 years ago, way before HHR.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
I'm leery of saying,
yeah. Okay. Then we just have a couple small ones, 2 small ones, 1 more bigger one. Small capital, that's just to replace smaller equipment, replacing 3 AEDs, I think that's important that we do that. And replacing a 550 hook truck, and for 120.
What is that?
Yeah, I didn't know either.
So,
Can I skip over the
unless you have a
blower?
breakdown.
Okay, it's a dump truck. And Pam had worked with Brian Francois, our mechanic, on the estimates because he does a lot of the building of the truck.
Repairs.
Yeah.
No, but he actually, like, will take the pieces and parts, you know, like the body, the chassis, he builds, he puts it all together, so.
So the one we currently have is,
So if Brian
Yes.
says it's bad, we probably need to replace that.
That is my theory, yes.
I've been in enough meetings with him to where if he says it's time, it's time.
Yeah. And I think I might have skipped over, there was a blower,
Stand-on blower?
stand-on blower that I passed on, yeah.
did we say no last year to that, though?
The last year we got something else, it was,
I thought we were gonna not do the standing or something, because I think I support that. I'm just trying to remember, I think we said no to it before, and I'm wondering if the need, Jim, do you know?
I don't.
I thought this was new,
Okay.
I know we have a couple already.
We do. We have 2. They found it very efficient and effective to, when they do their cleanups in spring and in the fall. It's so much more efficient than using backpack blowers, and cuts down the time that they spend cleaning up the parks. So,
Just some things, couldn't fund
You know, I
everything.
support it, I just,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it would be something that theoretically, maybe we could use ARPA money for, but.
As long as you have the tools that you need for your guys.
Yeah. It's not, they have the tools, this would be a better tool.
I can appreciate that.
Yeah,
What else, anything?
that's it.
Jim, Parks and Rec Commission members, thank you. We appreciate it. Yep. All right. Last item is police. Yeah.
It's possible they think it's not today.
No, he
No,
knows.
no, he knows the chief.
But
Yeah, he knows.
is he coming?
He's not-
Oh, is he
Jim,
coming?
is it-
Oh,
No.
okay.
No. he's
So
not.
we should wait till tomorrow night.
You want to?
What, are we waiting? Because if we should have them here, then we should have them here for that discussion.
You still trying to get to where you're gonna go?
Would really like to go.
Delay it, no?
Fine.
I don't mind putting it off.
Yeah.
Can we do that?
I mean, the real big thing that you have to talk about in their budget is,
The additional
number
FTE.
53.
Yeah.
And that's really the only thing.
I mean, obviously, there's increases in other places,
No, it's the
and stuff,
FTE.
but that's
52 or 53?
They're going-
53. We've already authorized 52.
All right.
Guys, go and look at the hold-on field backstop.
okay,
Okay, we'll do that.
thanks.
All right, so tomorrow,
Looking forward to talking.
yeah, hold on a second. So tomorrow's agenda will now include police, fire marshal, disaster prep, all the fire departments, fire commission, and EMS. Everybody good with that tomorrow?
And I will no longer be late, so,
You
yeah.
will no longer be late.
Correct.
Got it, okay. So that's what we'll discuss tomorrow. Let's cut off today's discussion. Motion to adjourn. Sarah, second Mike, thank you. All adjourned.
Sarah, can you-